Welcome to the Heroic Investing Show. As first responders, we risk our lives every day. Our financial security is under attack. Our pensions are in a state of emergency. A single on-duty incident can alter or erase our earning potential instantly and forever. We are the heroes of society. We are self-reliant and we need to take care of our own financial future. The Heroic Investing Show is our toolkit of business and investing tactics on our mission to financial freedom.
Hello and welcome to episode 153 of the Heroic Investing Show. So it's been a little while since I put out some episodes. I've been traveling all around the country, so I truly appreciate your patience, but I got a huge backlog, and so I should also apologize to those who have kindly done interviews with me and are being patiently waiting for me to get these up and running. I'm going to kind of front load a bunch of my current episodes to get these very kind individuals out there and to share that content with all of you. And then I'll circle back and start to get some more of Jason's best of the best with him interviewing individuals over the past few years. So you'll see those coming up, but this is one that I want to make sure I get out there because it's current and relevant to a trend that's happening in the real estate world. So this podcast, as you know, is for first responders, members of the military, veterans, and anyone looking to improve their financial future and gain some freedom with their time. We're teaching America's heroes different techniques, different abilities, some lessons learned on how to build passive income, build their startup business maybe, and safely grow wealth through real estate and other alternative type investments. So on this one, Jason I'm introducing you to a new podcast that Jason's been running. It's called the Short-Term Rental Profits Podcast. And Jason's interviewing a legend in that industry. It's a very short industry, so it doesn't take too long to become a legend, but this guy is awesome. So the gentleman's name is Nate Secor. And I had the opportunity to spend some time with Nate in Philadelphia and again up in New York City at the end of springtime, beginning of summer, as part of the Venture Alliance Mastermind and an event that Platinum Properties was putting on there in Philadelphia. He knows this industry extremely well. So he's doing short-term rental. And I'm sure there are a couple of different methods that you can do short-term rentals. So what Jason is talking with clients and listeners about frequently is the idea of purchasing a property and then renting it on a weekly basis or a shorter term, maybe monthly basis than on a typical annual basis. And my wife Sue and I just did this with a property in St. Augustine, Florida, and we're closing on it here shortly. New construction, and real excited to see how this thing is going to go. So if you have any questions about how it's working out for us and lessons we've personally learned. I learned all kinds of stuff like hotel fees, different tax rates, flood insurance, and things like that associated with having properties on the coast. I learned a tremendous amount already, and we haven't had the first person stay there yet. So more lessons coming. So that's the idea of owning the property and running it that way. So what Nate's going to talk about and what he does with his personal business, it's both all of the aspects of Airbnb and the platforms and the abilities to use this. But there's another way to do this. It's to sublease. So in areas where you can lease a property, lease an apartment, lease a house, and then turn around and not actually live in it, but sublease it out or rent it out on a daily or monthly or weekly basis, you can do an arbitrage, right? So you're renting it, let's say $5,000 a month, a pretty nice high-end property. So that comes down to, $5,000 is, I shouldn't be doing this math in public here, but it's $100 and some a day, right? So maybe a $5,000 property like that, you could rent it out for $400 a day. I don't know. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but you can get a large arbitrage on a daily perspective of renting this place out. So he's doing that. He's not actually owning and getting mortgages and stuff like that on the properties. In most of his cases, he is leasing the thing in the turnaround and renting it out and managing it via Airbnb. That's a very quick way with less capital to get the thing up and running. Now, some of the things you have to worry about or think about is that maybe that's not legal in a specific area because this could be a place where they don't want a lot of partying going on, right? So what you want to do is you want to find an Airbnb or short-term rental friendly neighborhood, and that's really what kind of Jason's team, my wife Sue and the others are bringing to, the value they're bringing is helping you find locations where this is an acceptable way to run a business. And so I'm excited about it. I think you're going to learn a ton from Nate. And next episode, Wednesday, I guess, we'll be back with a bunch of fresh, new veterans, first responders, people that I've talked to that have a tremendous amount to share with others, specifically from their own personal story and maybe even in a service that they provide. So hang in there, and thanks again for your patience on getting this back on track. We will be back with you in just a couple of days. Thanks so much.
It's my pleasure to welcome Nate Secor to the show. I've known this guy a long time, and he has some incredible experiences with Airbnb. He is the self-proclaimed, everyday, average Joe who is better than average at Airbnb, and it's good to have him on the show today. Nate, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here, Jason.
It's good to have you. Where are you located?
Personally, I live in Costa Mesa, right here in Orange County.
Good stuff.
California.
Good stuff. My old home, Orange County, California. Well, you have been doing some good stuff with short-term rentals lately. And how did you get your start? How long ago was it? You had lots of experience in the long-term rental side of the industry years ago when I first met you. Tell us about the evolution of short-term rentals for you.
It's funny because they tie together. The very first property that I did Airbnb with, even the first time I really was exposed to the possibility of it, was a listing that I had, and the seller was very impatient. He wanted his house sold in like 2 weeks, and I told him, just give me another couple of weeks and I'll sell it. And he was really impatient, and I had already previously negotiated a lease option that I was going to do with him. So at the time, he had told me he also did Airbnb in that house, and he was getting $6,000, $7,000 a month. And I really believe that he didn't really know what he was doing and wasn't the greatest business person. And I thought, well, if he can get $6,000 or $7,000 out of this house, I think I could. So I lease optioned it from him on a 4-year lease option, which was pretty cool. My payment on that was $3,520. And eventually I worked the average monthly rent up on that property to about maybe $11,000, $12,000. And so at that point I was hooked on Airbnb. That was my very first Airbnb.
What year was that?
Like a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Okay, so it's 2016, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Wow. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So now you've got 13 properties that you're doing as short-term rentals. Is that correct?
Correct. And that one actually isn't one of them because they outlawed Airbnb in that city.
Right.
But it did give me my start.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good stuff. That's a fair thing. I'm glad you mentioned the regulatory component. Maybe we should just talk about that for a moment. How much does that concern you? I remember when I lived in San Diego for just about a year, I used to see signs all over these beach neighborhoods, that were anti-short-term rentals. They say, neighborhoods are for, I can't remember what the signs used to say, but there was just a lot of reaction, very negative reaction to people that owned these expensive homes near the beach, and their neighbors were renting them out as short-term rentals, and they were getting super annoyed by it. What do you think about the regulatory climate? And by the way, where was that property? Did you mention that, or did you want to mention that? What city?
Lake Forest, California.
Okay. So Lake Forest in Orange County has outlawed Airbnb, right? Or short-term rentals?
Lake Forest is definitely one of the just no Airbnb cities, basically.
Yeah, okay. And when you use the word Airbnb, by the way, are you using that generically to apply to all short-term rentals? It sounds like that's your favorite platform, but just thought I'd ask you.
Yes, and we probably won't have time to get into it, but as of right now, that's actually the only platform I use. And I have used other ones, so I'm totally familiar with most or all the other platforms, but I only use Airbnb.
Good stuff. Okay, so regulatory environment concerns. Just thought I'd ask you that.
Definitely, it's something that is important to keep your eye on. In terms of the United States, I don't see a lot of regulatory concerns over the next 5 years. If you look at certain geographical areas, though, for instance, Southern California, we're like a hot spot for regulatory issues.
Yeah. Well, New York City is too,
New York City, San Francisco, like some of these big cities, definitely you have to keep your eye on it. Again, those still become 5 or 10% of the whole Airbnb possibilities across the U.S. And remember, Airbnb works in the whole world. So
right. Okay, good. Okay, so your experience, you were just kind of giving your background there in terms of it. And so you got hooked, as a traditional realtor, you had this listing, the property wasn't selling quickly enough, seller was impatient. You did the lease option for 4 years, which is quite an amazingly long lease option term. So congrats on that. Yeah. And then you turned it into an Airbnb and did very well with it, right?
Until now, I actually have a sandwich lease option because I just have a tenant in there, and they're at $4,550 or $4,600. So, it's still good, but not as good as when it was an Airbnb.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, good. So what was next after that?
I think that around that time, there were a couple other properties I floundered with, and, maybe I'll share real quickly. I made a mistake and bought one that was a little bit expensive, and it was like a $2 million neighborhood, but it was sort of like the neighborhood you'd want to live in, but not necessarily vacation in. So, there are mistakes people can make in Airbnb. So I'll just throw that out there. I was able to unwind that property pretty quickly. And then so far at this point now, I focused on cities where they actually collect a tax. And I've just made a good name for myself. I have several of my properties are two from the same owner. So at this point, I have people coming to me and telling me they want to do more properties with me.
Fantastic. So you focus on cities that actually collect a tax on purpose, then that's kind of counterintuitive what you just said in some ways, because most people would say, well, I don't want to pay a tourism tax, right? But you know that the cities that collect the tax like the revenue, so they're unlikely to change and go against the short-term rental business if they're getting paid, right?
Yeah, and in my conversations with those cities at this point, it does seem that they've made a conscious effort that they are going to work with the vacation rental companies, and they prefer the revenue versus, not having the revenue and not having the headache. Yeah. So in many ways, the conversation with them is completely different working with the cities. It's more like, oh, it's okay if I know that they had a party there and there's no way you could have known about that. So thank you for taking care of it as soon as you found out about it. Sure. And then, of course, cities that are not collecting money are like, you need to get out of my city.
Yeah, basically. Right. Exactly. Well, that's always the way it works, follow the money. That's good. Good stuff. So what tips and things have you learned? What tips can you share with our listeners? Things that you've learned, whether they be, just general advice or technology, apps, things that smart home stuff. Take it wherever you want, Nate.
My number one app that is both very economical and very useful, I would say, is Smart B&B. Even if you have one listing, if it were me, I would definitely get Smart B&B. I think it comes out to about $8 per listing, and you only get charged in the month that you have a listing. So if you rent out your house for 3 months out of the year, you'd pay $24. So Smart B&B, without, getting too much into it, I'll let the listeners do their own research. But basically, the best feature of Smart B&B is that it has automated messaging so that you're really able to deliver good customer service without using any of your own time. So a lot of my messaging to my clients is like, you're welcome, great, and awesome, because I've already sent them all the information automated, and then they've just said, oh, thank you so much. And then I just say, you're welcome.
Right. So the Smart B&B basically is like a bot. It has this sort of prefab answers, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I, of course, customize all mine for each property. Yeah. But, I have, pre-check-in, check-in, the day after, the day before they check out, the day after they check out. Like, they get about 7 letters throughout their stay. A lot of the feedback that I get is like, amazing customer service.
Yeah, Nate's robot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so Smart B&B, any other apps or technologies in general?
Well, again, I mentioned earlier that I use Airbnb, and I consider Airbnb a technology, and a lot of the other companies are not just at the level of Airbnb in terms of simplicity. That would be my recommendation, and I'm not going to totally get into why, again, just based on time, but my recommendation is for anyone looking to scale beyond 1, 2, or 3 properties, I would focus on Airbnb. And personally, even if you were going to do 1, 2, or 3, I would still only use Airbnb. It is a pretty amazing technology. The client pays about 10%, you pay 3%. And the way that I look at it is I'm paying 10% for marketing and all the technology. And, they do the rest.
What is your second favorite platform after Airbnb? Do you like VRBO or any of the others, or are they just all very far behind?
For certain homes, VRBO Home Away, which is now one company, is going to be a platform that people will need to use. And, it's hard to say what the difference is exactly. Some people feel that that platform's better for homes that book for longer vacations, say like a week or more. It's definitely my second favorite. I have used it. I have gotten long-term bookings for it. With, again, just to keep it super brief, the reason that I only use Airbnb is because, one, it's more scalable to use one. And then two, it's like, if I had 25 reviews, say, to split up, I'd rather have all 25 on one platform instead of, say, 12 on one and 13 on the other.
Right.
And I actually think that there's enough users on Airbnb for most cases that if you're, high profile on Airbnb,
you got enough of the market there. Yeah, I get it. Okay, so what is your target property? How do you pick a property that you want to turn into a short-term rental property? Markets, price ranges, bedroom count. There are so many things to think about. A lot of variables, high end, low end, middle market, close to what amenities and so forth. Give us some guidance there.
I like bigger is better for me. So, 5-bedroom, 4-bedroom. I also like studios because they're super cheap on the rent side. Overall, what I would say, though, is my business plan, if you will, at least where I'm working right now, it'll change if I go into different cities. But my business plan is $100,000 average per property per year at 35% margin. So you can do the math.
Explain what that means a little bit. $100,000 per property per year at 35% margin, meaning each property is netting you $35,000 a year, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and how do you calculate net though? Just net, or I always want to ask that because there may be some complexity to that math. If you.
I'm just trying to think if there's any other expenses that are not included in that. Not especially. Not that I can really think of.
Any particular age of the properties? You talked about how you like the big ones and the real small ones.
I like the more fixed up, the better. So I'd rather pay a premium for a nice property. But, it's not the only factor. Obviously, lower rent helps as well. But apples to apples, I like bigger properties that are more fixed up. And I like the best of the best. So if one property costs double, say, and it was on the sand versus, say, another property was half as much and it was, one row back from the sand, or like if one property was a penthouse in a building and then the other property was, on the first floor, and both rents were fair, like say one was like $6,000 a month and one was $3,000 a month, I'd probably rather get the $6,000 a month one.
Okay, so the more premium property, and then how are you pricing them? Are you using the pricing tool built into the Airbnb system? Are you using something outside of it, like some of the others that we've had on the show where they help you with pricing and such, or what do you do?
I believe those programs can help. I can't remember off the top of my head what my first choice would be. I know if I heard it, but I'm not using those. I price them all myself. I know my market really well. I also know what I pay for rent. So it's usually based on that, depending on the season. Obviously, it falls as we get closer. And it's kind of like I go a little bit by my feel. And sometimes I'm a little bit off and I take notes and then, I improve. So I prefer to do it that way. There are companies anyone can Google. There's a couple of them. You just Google what's the best company for Airbnb, and I think 2 of them will come up. I can't remember their names right off the top of my head. I think they're both good. I don't think the Airbnb one is really great. Sometimes if I'm ready to just toss a few days basically at whatever, I'll use the Airbnb for some of the last minute weekdays, but I don't use them. They do not seem correct for weekends at all. And they also don't usually seem correct for high season. That's say 6 months away.
In other words, they're estimating low for those things. It sounds right?
They might say, offer it at $350 and I'm renting it out for $700. So, that's not going to work.
Tell us about some of the parameters you're setting on your rentals. Are you willing to rent them for one weekend night? For example, if someone wants to rent for just Saturday night, or do you require them to take it for Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Or do you have a night minimum or a weekly discount or longer term discount? Anything like that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm going to answer it as best as I can in a short period. That's probably a big topic that, when I do create that online thing, that I'll probably spend a lot of time on. So what I do is I stagger it so that, let's say in January, my summer, I'll probably have on all my properties 5 to 7 day minimum because it's far enough out. That's just what I do. And then if it's January, by the time February is coming around, I should be like 50 to 80% booked. And at that point, February, we'll have like no restrictions at all, 1 day minimum. And then March might have a 2 day minimum. And then April might have a 3 day minimum, and May, 4. So I kind of stagger as it gets closer because I don't want to have, 22 bookings in a month and I also don't want somebody on January to book 1 day on July 4th, if that makes sense. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a little more complicated than that, but that's basically the gist of it, is that as I get closer, I get more flexible.
Right. Okay, good stuff. So any other parameters you're putting on the rentals?
I just wanted to go back real quickly on the margin, because you were asking me about the margin, and the numbers that I explained may not make sense when I say about $100,000 a year and 35%. So the expenses in there would probably be 40% rent. And then you have, of course, your cleaning fees and then Airbnb fees and, miscellaneous fix up. And, on a $10,000 a month, again, my goal would be to make $3,500 off that property. So just in case people were thinking my numbers didn't add up on that.
Right. Okay. I want to ask you about operationally. Do you visit your properties much, or is everything pretty much done remotely? I find that with a lot of the owners I talk with, that, the housekeeper is like the de facto property manager, if you have a good one. And I just would like you to address some of the operational issues there.
That's a great question too. And I have a partner that I brought in that gets paid 30%. Maybe I should have mentioned that at the beginning. I'm not sure. He makes 30%. The house cleaner is really important, but he's my go-between between the housekeeper and all the guests. And he is, again, if someone's looking for who they would get for that, super customer service oriented, ex-military, just handles stuff like very organized, creates lists, and that's not my jam per se. I'm more big picture.
Right.
And so basically what he does is allow me to work on the business end of it, talking with people like you and, looking into other markets and how can I, create management out of this for people who want to do their own Airbnbs and like all these other areas where there's revenue to be made. I can focus on all that. Mm-hmm. And basically the business side of it, what I handle is I handle pre-booking messaging, which is like more of the sales side of it, and handles post-booking messaging.
Right. That's a good way to divide it. Now, is he in the app with you, this customer service person, or how do you actually operationally do that? Are you using the same app password, or what do you do?
Yeah, you're another great question, actually, because Airbnb allows you to have what's called a co-host.
Okay.
We both see all the messages.
Okay.
And then if I, for instance, wanted to create another opportunity in another state, I could create co-hosts in that other city, their messaging, and then I see all of it in all the cities, but the co-host only sees what they're responsible for, so they don't get bogged down by Orange County messaging and stuff like that. So another nice piece of technology by Airbnb that makes management easy.
So you could have different co-hosts in different cities then. Like if you have properties in, one city versus another city, you'd have different co-hosts in each place, but you're the host. And then you assign different co-hosts for each group of properties in that city, right?
Correct.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, good. How do you find this person? What do you call them? I mean, I really do like ex-military people. I find that they tend to be awesome to work with. But, did you put a Craigslist ad out? And did you say, property manager, vacation rental manager. Usually that would gravitate toward people like with a real estate license. And this person doesn't need a license, do they?
They don't need a license. He does have a license. I've known him for 10 years or so. I consider him a friend, but at the time when I created this with him, we didn't have any other business involvement together. So it was, someone I circled back to and thought this person would be good at this. And I actually had a couple other ones already. I still keep those separate because they just do so well. Those ones are more like 50% margin. So I keep those, but I have the other ones with him, and I just thought he would be good at it. And I knew that I couldn't do, my goal is maybe between 30 and 60 properties here in Orange County. And I just thought I'm not going to be able to do it. And to be honest with you, I'm not a real huge fan of working with the customers and stuff. I'd rather work on the business, and he can do all that.
Yeah. Okay, good. And so he just gets 30% of what? Of the net rent, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you pay that like on a per property basis? Like, are you paying him constantly, or are you figuring it all out once a month, or just? I love that you're sharing all this because
he has a salary right now. Yeah. As we're in rapid growth, a lot of the money obviously is being reinvested into more properties. Different people have different ways. Some people like to do a studio where, it takes $500 or $1,000 to furnish it, and it's real cheap. I do bigger properties that require bigger, lease payments and bigger deposits, sometimes even 2 months deposits, and then all the furniture. So it can be a $30,000 investment on a property. So there is some repayment of that happens.
Yeah. I was going to ask you where you buy the furniture and any tips there, but go ahead on the paying the co-host first.
There's some repayment of that goes on. He's on a salary, but it's like the amount of future revenue that he's going to be getting is pretty exciting for him. So he's totally cool with being on a salary, and I don't actually take any salary, but once it's all caught up and everything's paid, I'll reimburse myself my 70% compared to the 30% that he got while he was on salary. Mm-hmm. And then his income probably in, 3 to 6 months will be going up very sharply, and because a lot of that payback will have happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so furniture and housewares. I know we got to wrap it up, but just want to touch on these items too.
My favorite places that I get the majority of my stuff, because I do like pretty good stuff, I'd say Amazon is one of mine for a lot of the beds and mattresses. Zenus is a company that I use for both of those. They're good and inexpensive. Memory foam mattresses and stuff.
Zenus mattresses? I've never even heard of that one. There's all these new mattress companies,
Yeah, they must be killing it because just myself, I'm buying tons of mattresses.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So memory foam mattresses, $299 for a queen Zenus. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so like
stuff like that.
Okay.
And then Costco is one of my good vendors. I'm steering away from IKEA. Like I used to get a few things there, and at this point, I'm like, no, I try to, have a bit of a design with my homes. I don't like to just do super cheap. So even like I just bought a whole storage full of a Stagers garage. So she has better quality stuff that I can mix in that makes my homes look a little more unique than like IKEA and stuff like that. Yeah. So Amazon and Costco are my top two. Okay,
good stuff. Anything else you want us to know, Nate, before we wrap it up? And please feel free to share any contact info, website, whatever about you, that you want, and or Twitter account, anything. Just any closing thoughts.
Well, the less social media I use, it seems like the more money I make, so I don't really do a whole lot on social media right now. Yeah. If anyone wants to reach out to me, my cell is I would text me too. I pretty much leave my mailbox full because I don't answer my phone, and so text me at 714-623-2959 if you want to collaborate or talk about, Airbnb. And then closing thought I would say is, I think that what you're about is empowering people to be responsible for their own finances and their own life. And what I would say is consider doing one Airbnb, even if it's not the main thing that you do. And it could be something that adds $2,000 to $4,000 a month to your income. And I think that for most people in the U.S., an extra $2,000 to $4,000 a month would make a difference in their life. So
yeah, no question about it. And I'll tell you something, like everything in life, Nate, you just got to do it. That's the best schooling ever, is just actually doing it. And so many people are afraid to do stuff. You got to just do more stuff, make more mistakes.
I was afraid too.
Yeah.
And I'm still afraid of things, and I'm like afraid every day because I'm just always going bigger.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's not for sure going to work out, but it's definitely not going to work out if you stay afraid and do nothing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, good. Nate Secor, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing all of your great insights. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.